For our next session, Chourangi Nonstop, flying Kolkata to London, we have Mr. Aditya Ghosh, co-founder, Akasa Air, and board member, Fabindia, OYO and Homage Ventures. Over the course of an illustrious career, Mr. Ghosh has worn several hats, from elevating Indigo Airlines to new heights and taking OYO around the world, to founding Ashoka University and supporting women entrepreneurs and diverse organizations through Homage Ventures. He is now ready to take on his newest challenge with the opening of Chourangi in London. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Aditya Ghosh.
Thank you. Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm standing between you and the awards, I think, right? So I'll try to make it quick, but also yummy and interesting. This has been a passion project for Anjan and me. Anjan Chatterjee, who's the owner of specialty restaurants, and I always say I'm kind of riding on his coattails. So Chourangi is a Calcutta food restaurant right in the middle of London, next to Marble Arch. And this is clearly my first, foray into the restaurant business, and of course, Anjan's first foray, into the UK. They often say that you can take, a Bengali away from Calcutta, but you can't take Calcutta away from a Bengali, and that's kind of, the story of this, passion project of ours. But it's actually not a Bengali food restaurant. What we kind of have worked upon is to try to take the truly cosmopolitan nature of the cuisine of Calcutta and put it out there. But of course, a lot of people, kind of branch off and launch off into passion projects. I'm originally from the airline business, don't I know that? But we're trying to kind of do it in a way where it is also financially rewarding. Of course, the biggest challenge was not just kind of thinking about pushing ourselves from our individual, comfort zones, but also going into a market which is highly competitive. Indian food is clearly not, a stranger to London. And there are some phenomenal sort of restaurants already there, some of which we're all so proud of. Not sure if you know this or not, probably actually you do, but after the French cuisine, the Indian cuisine has the most number of Michelin stars in London. So we were going into a reasonably competitive market. And I was just talking to Veer Sanghvi backstage, and he reminded me that it's quite ironical that most Indian restaurants are run by Bengalis from the other side of the border mostly, but there is not a single Calcutta or a Bengali food restaurant in London. And that's what we wanted to do. It's a very complex cuisine, but we wanted to kind of showcase it in a way and put it out there for the world to see. Clearly, London and Calcutta has had a long, shared history. This is the picture of a bus that used to run till as late as 1976. It was the longest bus ride in the world for a long, long period of time. And it took over 50 days to get from London to Calcutta one way. And that's a true story. So this was there till the late 70s. The kind of brand values that we've gone on with is passion around food and service, authenticity around the ingredients and the food, and most importantly, the integrity of how to kind of bring it together. When we kind of thought about even the design element, we didn't want it to be a typical sort of Indian-looking restaurant with red and white, checked table covers and the Natraj in the corner and dimly lit lights. But we wanted to kind of celebrate the colonial influence, make it warm and welcoming. So we went to a great design agency called Design LSM, and we kind of picked up on the mood board around what were all the details that make Calcutta Calcutta. So went back into the clubs and looked at furniture and looked at ceiling fans and grills and so on and so forth, and then started kind of building together what the look and feel of the restaurant is. Um, the interesting bit is that we had the restaurant ready to open with furniture, with cutlery, with the kitchen running, literally 4 weeks before the pandemic hit, right? So everything was in place. We got the team there. We had food tastings running, and we even did a little puja, and we're all excited. And then the pandemic hit. Of course, during the pandemic, there were a lot of great restaurants that kind of, fell prey, and some of them are phenomenal brands, which just disappeared because it was just, mayhem. But in that, when the world was kind of coming to an end, we tried to stick together, but with a lot of support. And I was trying to compare about how things happened in India versus how things happened in the UK. In the UK, for example, the government gave us support for almost 18 months, all the way from March 2020 to September 21. We're almost up to about, I think I'd say, £2,200 a month. The government gave out to employees directly. So that made sure that the restaurant business as a whole could keep people on their roles and keep the teams together. Similarly, landlords. A lot of restaurants were able to renegotiate, and we too got a rent relief for a long period of time from our landlord. Compared to what happened in India, where I think many people like ourselves went to the government asking for support, and the support came differently. But at least I'll be honest, we just benefited from this immediate and very direct support that we got from the government. VAT, for example. The VAT was brought down from 20% to 5%. It's gone up to about 12.5% now, but it's still not gone up to the original 20 at the pre-pandemic levels. So what we experienced was that how, as I said, this has been a bit of a personal journey for myself and Anjan too, that how in this kind of crisis, government in the UK sort of came together to help with all the things that were big cost items, whether it was taxes, whether it was employee benefits, whether it was rentals and so on and so forth. But the other challenge that also we faced, and I'm also involved, as you know, in our hotels business globally, is that due to Brexit, there has been a huge shortage of manpower in the UK, and from everything that I hear, that's going to continue to be the case for the next 12 to 18 months. So even as restaurants, hotels, especially the hospitality sector is beginning to open up, there's continuously a shortage of manpower. Minimum wages, while they stayed where it is, but the average wage that you were paying, even to the frontline staff, has gone up almost 50%. So, which basically means that if you're trying to plan a business there, the wage costs, wage bills have gone up dramatically from what it used to be. And then after an excruciating wait for almost 18 months, we kind of saw in May and June of 2021, things started opening up again. People started coming back. But with all that was happening in India at that time, we just didn't have the courage. But a little bit later in the summer, in the fall, we went back and put in more capital and started bringing the restaurant back into operations. And during that time also, another challenge that we faced was visa restrictions for people to come back and taking the chefs, etc., from here. Because one of the things that we've been very, very focused on is the authenticity of the experience, the food, the ingredients, and so on and so forth. And unfortunately, we were able to get some chefs from here. Of course, Anjan is pretty crazy, so therefore, whether it's the designers or whether it's the chefs and whether it's the waiting staff, believe it or not, we brought them to India 19 times over the last 4 years and made them walk through every gully in Calcutta to be able to get a feel of what it means to put together the restaurant. And finally, we opened up in October 2021. Great start. October, November, December, at least the early parts of December, we're outstripping our revenue projections by 30%, and then bang, there comes Omicron, right? And things started really wobbling till between in the last couple of weeks of December. January was like a complete washout. February, we started coming back a little bit. And then, since then, of course, things have started improving a little bit. But even when we saw last summer, the actual consumer spend on hospitality in the UK is 70% down from pre-pandemic levels. Of course, the upturn and the recovery is happening faster in terms of the time frame, but there is still some amount of challenge ahead. We're now gearing up for the summer ahead because this is the first summer that we will have when things will be back to so-called normal for us to be able to experience what's going on. But in the meantime, consumer trends are rapidly changing. Even in the so-called high-end restaurants, almost 25-30% of food sales are happening through online deliveries. Ours, of course, is not at that level. It's at about 10% at the moment because we've just about started. But what's also happening is that the choices that consumers are making in the kind of food, the kind of packaging, the kind of ingredients is dramatically different from what it was 2 years ago. And there lies another lesson that if you're trying to build a brand today for the next 20, 30 years, the targeted population, if you're targeting the population between the age of, let's say, 18 to 35, that population with whom you can create some amount of loyalty with the brand will continue to spend on you over the next 30 to 50 years, depending on which age group you're targeting. Put another way, and now I'm stepping away from the restaurant business into any consumer-facing business. I sit on the board of Fabindia. I'm on the board of OYO. I'm trying to build a new airline. The trend that we are seeing is that businesses that were primarily focused on the age group of 38, 39 to 60, 65, because that was the high-spending consumer segment, that segment is going to fall off the spending curve very, very soon. On the other hand, if we are going to focus on the age group of 18 to 35, who are either just about entering the workforce or are in the sort of lower to middle end of the workforce, if we can create some consumer stickiness there, some brand loyalty there, then they are going to stick to us till the age of about 65 to 70. Why? Because clearly trends have shown that as healthcare improves, as life expectancy increases, and as the working life of an individual increases, the spend and the trend of spend is dramatically different. The other thing that, this is my own personal view, only anecdotally, I should do some more research on this, but the same way that brands and certain trends in consumer spending took birth in the post-war era in the early 50s and 60s and led to people, especially in places like the United States, buying more refrigerators and more televisions and more ovens and cooking ranges and so on and so forth. The choices that consumers will start making today in the post-pandemic world over the next 2-3 years are likely to stay and do the next sort of, let's call them the baby boomer generation 2 or baby boomer generation X. And they will determine the kind of products and services that will provide us certain amount of sort of stargazing ability to see how, and what people will spend on for the next maybe 15 to 20 years. And that you're already seeing in the last 1 year. And all those businesses in various consumer sectors, especially in the hospitality services sort of sector, all those businesses which were able to adapt fast and change their focus into this younger group are beginning to come out of the pandemic faster. Then there are some other decisions that actually business decisions that one has to look at because of these trends. Which basically means, let me take an example from a different industry, right? We talk about in the Fabindia board a lot about this. We make furniture, we make clothing, and so on and so forth. And we built a great franchise, I believe, over the last 60 years. All this while, you focused a lot on great raw material so that your product lasted for a long period of time. And therefore, for that long-lasting experience, you also, therefore, priced in that raw material. What has dramatically changed is that if you're not going to now keep your furniture for the next 10 years, and you're going to only keep it for the next 5-7 years, then the consumer is also not willing to pay for that longevity of that product over the next 20-30 years. Which then forces people to then come back and think that in whatever product that you're putting out there, or whatever service you're putting out there, or carpet you're putting out there, or hotel rooms you're building, if you're anyway going to be forced to change that in a much shorter period of time, then what will be the right input cost that will then determine the new ROI and NPV of that investment? Because we love talking about NPVs, right? But depending on what is the discount rate and the time period that you take, the NPV will change dramatically. So these are some very interesting trends that are emerging that we are seeing even in our small little Chourangi, but then extrapolating it into other businesses. Got some great brand love. We've been named as one of the top 10 Indian restaurants repeatedly by Harper's Bazaar and Condé Nast Traveler and so on and so forth. But of course, still very, very early days. What we are now trying to figure out is that what is the demographic of people who are coming in? We're clearly getting a lot of love from Indians or people who are familiar with India and South Asia. But then we also know that if it does not have great amount of love and stickiness with the sort of local population, it's going to be a fad which will die. So that basically means we've got to constantly start thinking about how to appeal to that market segment and stick with that. The other is, how do we solve for manpower and skilled manpower and so on and so forth? How do we solve for supply chain costs as our world goes through these crazy times, and so on and so forth. But you know what? It's just been such an interesting personal journey for Anjan and me. Like I said, more than anything else, just stepping out of the comfort zone in a very, very difficult time, trying to take something which was just a personal dream and putting it out there and putting a large amount of money, or certainly a large amount of money for people like Anjan and me, and trying to make a success out of it. Fortunately, the good news is our average spend is at about double of what the average spend is of similar restaurants in that area. So so not popping out the champagne just as yet, but certainly hoping that this is the beginning of some rejuvenation and at least some reason for cheer as the world goes through these crazy times. Thank you for having me here. Wishing you all the very, very best. And congratulations to all of you for having no hotel rooms left in Bombay City. So, well, I guess we are back. So thank you very much. Wish you all the best.